You're listening to Raising Anchor, a Rhode Island FC podcast. We're glad you're here. Hello, and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Etchikin, coming to you on Thursday, March 21st. Rhode Island FC earns their first point ever in club history in front of a sold-out crowd at Beirne Stadium as they drew against New Mexico United with what could only be a storyline equalizer in the dying minutes. We'll talk about what that game was like and why it feels like a victory and what's in store for the club as they prepare to take on Monterey Bay FC this upcoming weekend. To relive all the moments all over again, and join me as co-host Jason Carey. Jason, how's it going, my friend?
Doing good, buddy. These fans, do they know how much we love them? We should be watching the USA lose to Jamaica right now, but we're recording a podcast.
I don't even know the update. I know that like 40 seconds in, there was a throw in from the side, and we were already down. What was the score before we started?
It was 1-0 at the time we started. Classic Greg Berhalter tactics. Who knows?
Berhalter ball is my favorite type of ball.
Do you think Greg goes to Greg's? I mean, there's 3 G's for some reason in both their names. That can't be a coincidence. How many Gregs in the country do you think have 3 G's in their name?
We have to be careful because if we start talking about Greg's, that can open up a can of many problems because there are the people in this state that love Greg's and will defend it to their dying breath. And there are the same ones on the opposite side of the coin that would love to see it destroyed in the same breath. So we have to be really careful.
Very polarizing place, I guess.
You don't talk about Greg's and you don't talk about cellos. It's like as bad as politics in Rhode Island. You have your opinion on it and you just leave it alone.
Do people really quickly, like have different camps where you're either a Greg's person or a cellos person? Is that how it works?
That's a good question. Listeners, let us know. I've always known you're either pro one or the other, or you're either pro it or you're against it. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same kind of traveling caravan of sympathizers or haters. I wonder if they are separate camps. I wonder if they've ever tried to join forces to fight off the haters out there. So I definitely, of the two, I will keep my opinions to myself, but I definitely have a preference over one or the other. So, but again, to my dying day, I will never ever let that knowledge be known. It's not worth losing all of our credibility. We've worked so hard to
figure it out together one day, guys.
Speaking of credibility, we had a lot of new fans that we got to meet from last week's game. So if you're joining us for the first time, welcome to Raising Anchor. We're so excited to have you here. You can expect us to put out a podcast every Friday morning at 5 a.m. We record the night before, and eventually we'll move to kind of a live state. But you can always expect that podcast to come out Friday mornings at 5 a.m. If we have any special interviews with players or staff, those will normally drop on Mondays or Tuesdays, so you'll kind of get a double episode week. And then speaking of doubles, if there are 2 games in the week and it's a double week, you can anticipate we'll do double the coverage to cover those games. If you want to kind of roll back the tape, so to speak, and look at what we've done in the past, and you're looking to kind of get that taste, or you're new to the league or to soccer in general, we really recommend kind of going back and listening to the first 3 episodes, which cover the history of soccer in Rhode Island, the USL itself, and kind of the composition to get you prepped for what that is. And then episode 3 is kind of our take on what we understood, 8 to 9 months ago, the club's origin. So that's kind of a fun way to get acquainted with it. Don't judge us on the quality of those first 3 podcasts. We didn't know what we were doing back then. And then if you
still don't.
Jason, we're trying to get new fans here. Come on. But then if you want to peruse through the catalog of our almost 40 episodes, any of them that have just a single name, a first and last name, those are interviews with people that are associated with the club, associated with the project, or are players themselves. Highly recommend you go and give those a listen. Those are experts and professionals that will give you a much better take on anything that we've been saying here on this podcast. But again, welcome. We met so many incredible people, so many great fans. We've been working on this for so long, and we've seen sometimes it's the same people over and over, and we love those people too. But getting to go out there and see so many new faces, so many new excited individuals for Rhode Island FC, it was just a great experience.
Yeah, I'm surprised the amount of different people that we ran into. all different backgrounds, different walks of life, different reasons for getting into the team.
I must have handed out, I think, 500 stickers. In fact, we'll just jump to this real fast. I tried to find a spot where I could oversaturate the working knowledge of this podcast. So I picked a point right between where the two entrances to the stadium are for gates B and C. They both kind of like start in one line. And so I stood right there. I had no understanding of what I was doing at the time. I became both podcast spokesperson as I handed out, like, again, I think I had 500 stickers on me. I passed out almost 500 stickers. And then on top of that, I also had to direct traffic for the club as I helped navigate, like, this is line B, this is line C. You can go into either line. It's a Disneyland queue. I started getting asked questions about, I have my kid's going to be one of the ball kids. My kid's going to be out on the pitch. I have special allergies. I need special, like, I'm VIP. I started having direct traffic, and some questions I didn't have answers to. So I probably sent people on a goose chase, like, full disclosure. Like, I'll need to learn that for next time if I decide to stand there. But I didn't just work for the podcast that day, Jason. I was working for the club. They got me.
They should have came over there, gave you a vest, and those like orange cone things, like you're directing traffic.
Well, so you joke, but the press pass, that's also the same badge that the employees were wearing. It just has different things on it. So people would like look down. Some even said, "Oh, Matthew, where do I go?" It's like, "Oh, well, now you know my name. I have to help you. Servitude is here." So
you have a name badge. You must work here.
Exactly. So I've learned for the future, maybe 5 feet off that, and just kind of catch people. But it was really great. Again, we'll get into the game day experience here in a second. But we've got a lot of news to cover. So some quick hits. First and foremost, Jason, we're still undefeated, and I've been saying we've been undefeated since we first announced Coach Cano last March. I've been telling people in the league, I don't know if you know this, but Rhode Island FC is undefeated. They didn't like that statement since, allegedly we weren't playing games. But here we are. We've had our home opener, and we're still undefeated. So what a great way to start the week. Playing our hearts out against Mexico United, getting the draw. And I know there's fans that probably walked away from that like, oh, like we tied our first game. If you were there, and you witnessed what we saw, that was so much more a victory than anything else, especially the way that kind of unfolded in the stoppage time, in the dying seconds. How did that game resonate with you? And we'll unpack it in a second, but just like if you had to encompass it in a single description, what's your 30-second pitch on Rhode Island FC soccer after one match?
Real quick, for those who don't know, the last 4 or 5 expansion teams have not won. It wasn't since, I think, 2018. So, it just actually, not only have they not won, they all lost. I should have said sorry. So actually, we raised that bar.
We may have just educated new soccer fans too, who were already trying to get their mind around like, wait, we saw a tie. When you tie, as long as you haven't lost, you're undefeated. When you tie and you haven't won yet, and you've only lost, you're winless. So it's the beauty of the sport. So, but again, to summarize, like the 30-second elevator pitch, how would you describe to someone who didn't go to the game, what would you define that first soccer experience here in Rhode Island?
Just high energy, excitement. It just kept going. Throw in defiances, nonstop drumming and chanting, and you just had a great environment. That was the place to be.
I was almost jealous. We were sitting up in the crow's nest. So for in the future, if any of you want to see where we sit, we're not qualified to be in the press box, so we're out in the elements, sitting up above. So I think we've got one of the best seats in the house, to be honest, for a tactical
view up there
analysis.
Is really good, yeah.
Right, but like there was a part of me when we saw Defiance just partying, and it wasn't at the goal scoring moment; it was the entire match. There was a part of me that's like, man, I want to be down there in the circus. I want to be in the nonsense, and we'll unpack that in a minute.
Or when the wind kicked in, you're like, ooh.
Oh, yeah, it's like I could use the body heat right now. Yeah, no, 100%. So, listen, everyone needs to just understand right now, I predicted that this was going to be a draw, and I took so much heat last week for saying it was going to be a draw. I don't know if people are now going to try to blame me that we drew, but I'm going to say I was right. And for all of you who got in my DMs, who replied on Twitter, who yelled at me on Instagram that I was crazy, look who's crazy now. You said 3-2.
You didn't have faith.
What are you talking about? I knew what was going to happen. You were bragging
I
that
was
you would be
talking about the XG.
Oh man. Okay, so having said that, getting off of my high horse, Jason, first question I have to ask you for the week. Who is having their best soccer week ever right now? Is it RIFC fans celebrating their first match ever and their first point, which is more points than a certain club to the north? Hashtag not an MLS podcast. You know who you are, though. Is it Rhode Island FC fans? Is it Vermont Green FC fans celebrating their first Open Cup participation and win ever in Vermont history? Or is it the Des Moines Menace, where they saw the likes of LA Galaxy alumni Sasha Kleshton and Brian Rowe play a full 120 minutes on a cold Wednesday night, only to go to penalties and scrape out a win? Who has had the best soccer week of their lives?
Right now, maybe I'd say Vermont. We're speaking of legendary like alumni soccer players. Did you see Bill Hamid is playing for Nova FC right now too? He came out of retirement.
So you know where he retired, right? Like what league he retired from?
Yeah, from USL.
Yeah. Yeah, that one I didn't know until I saw that he was playing tonight in the Open Cup.
So, I mean, that game is going on right now. So, maybe later tonight, tomorrow, we'll see how that goes. But U.S. Open Cup is here.
I cannot wait. We actually got a chance to talk with Coach earlier today at practice, and we have a lot to kind of get listeners ready for in the preview for Monterey. But when we asked him, like, what were his feelings on the Open Cup, he was 100% honest. He said, right now, I'm watching it as a fan. I'm aware of it, but like we're not at a point yet to prepare a plan because we don't know who our opponent will be. But he intends to take it as serious as possible. He is not taking his foot off the gas and throwing away the chance to make club history and participate in something really special with the Open Cup. So I'm super excited. I've got Open Cup fever, and the only answer to that is more games in the Open Cup. So I can't wait to see where we go with this and who we get to face off against. Next question for you, and this is the more important one, to be honest. Are you team own goal or are you team Mark Doyle for the win? Because Rhode Island FC today put out a video that took our interview feedback or our interview audio, spliced it with some of the other moments from other players and the coach, and is like hey, this is Mark Doyle's goal to score. In fact, so much so that John Morrissey from USL Tactics, he wrote a breakdown of the Rhode Island FC's performance, and there's a footer if you go through his key. And there's a moment where it says the Chris Gloucester own goal. And then it says something. I can't say it on this podcast because we're family friendly here. But there's a lot of contention out there that some people say it should just be Mark's to celebrate as a club history moment. What are you? Are you a purist or are you an Irish believer here?
I mean, unfortunately, the stats it's going to say it's an own goal. I think that own goal does not happen without Mark Doyle, though. So,
what does your heart tell you? I'm not asking what you see with your eyes. I'm asking you what you feel in your heart here.
I will love to chase, my heartstrings, but at the end of the day, I am a numbers guy. So, we'll see who gets the first goal this weekend, is what I will say.
Oh, okay. There you hear it, fans. A man rooted in the scientific observation. Team own goal. Just say team own goal. It's easier than have to defend all of that.
My own goal jersey isn't here yet, so
we're gonna get to that. So then, moving on, Clay Holstead was honored by being the first Rhode Island FC player in club's history to be put to the USL Team of the Week. So congratulations, Clay. We're definitely gonna unpack your what I believe was a man of the match performance. Stephen Turnbull was actually honored by the Defiance 1636, which is the supporters group for the club. He was honored as the man of the match from the supporters group side. We're both in agreement that Clay was just absolutely spectacular on the day.
Oh yeah, he was all over the place. And not only was he being a, destroyer in a sense of a midfielder, like he was also being the creator, going up and that shot that hit the bar. Oh man.
I mean, he hit the bar several times, so it's just like the New Mexico United definitely had a 12th man on the field for the day. Some would argue a 13th, and again, we'll unpack all of that. Hitting through these last few, Grant Stoneman, congratulations, 100 caps in the USL. What an amazing feat. There's a lot of players that never get the opportunity to play professionally, and here we got a guy like Grant Stoneman who's getting his 100th cap. He'll be playing his 101st against Monterey Bay FC this weekend, so again, congratulations to you. And then the road kits. We're both wearing our road kits right now. I know. Sorry, guys. It's an audio format. We'll eventually work on this visual form, but we're wearing them. They look good. I know why these were delayed now. I understand it. I have unpacked the wizardry of what this club was trying to do.
They made too good of an away kit.
They made too good of an away kit, and they know that if they didn't delay the release of these, everyone would have only bought this one. They would have bought 2 of this one maybe. Not to take anything away from the energy kit, but oh my gosh, wearing this, seeing it on you right now, it's incredible.
I think it would have been a giant yellow, crowd, and then it'd be like, wait, isn't this RAFC?
Taylor Twellman would have gotten on Twitter and been like, well, I thought this was a RAFC match, but why did New Mexico show up so well here? No, I agree. But this kit, we've waited so long for it, and it is so amazing. I will say, fans, check your kits. Some people have complained online about some black marks and smudges. We think it's from maybe the shipping bags. Mine actually has a few. Yours does not, which lucky you. I'm going to see if it's machine washable before I make any kind of ruckus. But if you see those stains, make sure that, the club is here to take care of you. Make sure that you check them before you rip the tag off, hang it up, and then in like 6 weeks go, wait, what happened here? So just do your due diligence and check over your kits.
Yep, better check yourself before you wreck yourself, as they say.
Who says that, Jason?
The people, they do it. The general.
The general people? Okay. Wiser words have never been said. All right. And then moving into the last 2 things for our quick hits. Monterey Bay FC will be playing RIFC, and another historic milestone for the club, as this game will be broadcasted not only on NESN and ESPN+, but it will also be on Sirius XM FC channel 157 for the live coverage starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. So if you can't catch the game in person or watch it in an away party, and you're traveling somewhere and you have Sirius, I don't know that I've ever heard a USL club. I know that Sirius XMFC does play random soccer, like whether it's sports programming, it's actual games. I don't think I've ever heard a USL game on that station before. Have you?
I don't know. I don't even know anyone besides my mother-in-law who has Sirius XM.
Wow, shots fired. We're trying to build something up
no,
special.
I just say, maybe I'm just not hanging out with the right people. I don't know. I'm just a, Spotify music podcast guy.
So Jason, RFC card collecting app is here. We said ours last week. I didn't do as hot as I would like because I banked that Prince Sadie was going to get more minutes than he got. Shows how much insider information I actually get. I didn't score well. I don't know what you scored. I didn't even check, but that's okay. We're now living in the future. Who are you playing this week? What cards are you bringing to the table?
I'm probably sticking with similar, just people who I think will start. But more importantly, I found like my new favorite card. They're doing team firsts. So the first ever yellow card in team history, Noah Fuson. And it's like him just in like casual clothes.
Oh,
it's
man.
Terrific card.
We have to get the club to get the actual like ref pulling that on him. We got to get that stock photo so that can be added in. I thought you were going to say the Luchador of RIFC. That's a card that I saw that I need like yesterday. So fans out there that have collected that, let's talk. Let's do a trade. I'm willing to take a loss. Not an unreasonable loss here, but I'm willing to make my needs your gain. Let's work out a deal. I need the Luchadora of RIFC, and I want it the rarer the better. Let's talk deals. And while we're at it, if you got a yellow card for Noah Fuson that's better than the one Jason got, I will also take that so I can dunk on him on that one as well. As for who I've got set, I don't want to give away the predictions that we have for the lineup because that has changed since yesterday's Twitter nonsense where I put out a formation that put me in a lot of trouble with some fans. But I will say I still think Chico is due. So I'm doing Chico. I'm doing Connor McGlynn. And I think I'm going to actually switch to Noah Fuson. I think those 3 are going to be something special to watch here in the Monterey Bay game. But having said that, are you ready to focus in on the actual rest of this game day experience?
Yeah, let's just jump right into it.
Okay, so listen, other people have talked about it. You guys have already gotten your own experiences if you were at the game, so we don't need to really emphasize any of those moments. I think it's just important that we talk about a few things that were either hit or miss, or just things that maybe the general fans didn't know about. So one, A lot of fans, they showed up early. Super impressed to see that. I was worried that casual or fair weather fans were going to kind of show up 30 minutes prior, have a parking fiasco nightmare, and just not kind of really be able to enjoy the game. Like, my biggest concern was we'd still have fans trying to get in at like the 20th minute, like our New Mexico United fans talked about when they were on our podcast. I did see fans still coming in at the 20th minute, but it was not nearly the amount. And I saw those lines die down to where I think those were the fans that actually kind of showed up 10, 20 minutes prior to kickoff, not understanding what it would take to get to the actual match. But having said that, I would say 70 to 80% of fans were in the stadium somewhere at kickoff, and then they settled into their seats. Super impressed with the organization, the security, the sanitation. I really think that the club went above and beyond from an operations standpoint to make sure that fans had an incredible game day experience.
Yeah, considering this was the very first time they've ever played in a, stadium that's not their own, I think they did really well. There's a few little things here and there. Some people bringing bags from offsite. I think that, if you've ever been to an event, you should probably know this. But, it is what it is. I think people will kind of figure that out. The merch tent was really long.
So they're gonna work on the merch. They had a major focus.
Yeah,
they knew that was a mistake.
Yeah, we talked to them and they said they're going to get that figured out. But yeah, overall, it was a really good experience.
Yeah, and to the offsite bag thing, I think the only misstep was, if you bring the wrong bag in, to Jason's point, you really should know in the year 2024 from a security standpoint what the expectation. That's like going to the TSA at an airport and saying, "What do you mean I have to take my shoes off?" Like, I don't understand that. But I think the disconnect though was some of these fans were coming in last minute or bringing their tailgating supplies across from that parking lot at the Fidelity lot, and then trying to bring that in with them, and that was a big no-no, right? So I think maybe if the club wants to just do one little adjustment and make sure that someone at the shuttle stop that's bringing fans over is kind of screening people that get in and say, hey, like, if you bring that can't go into the stadium. I think that would save a lot of the frustrated fans that maybe have shown up and like tried to bring something in that they shouldn't. So that would be my only one there. And I just want to give a special shout out to Brian, the owner and head beer guy at Monterey Brewing. He was at the Defiance's parking lot space where they were having their party, and he was giving out free beer and just really kind of encouraging dialogue with the fans. He's a soccer crazy. He's not the right Manchester team, but that's okay. No one's perfect. But like just seeing him come out and just kind of party with people and like get to know, like those are the kinds of experiences that people remember outside of the soccer product. I wish we had been able to partake in the beer that day, but unfortunately we were working, so that's a shame. But like still, nevertheless, I really want to just call out to Brian. I'm hoping that the club or Defiance can work with him in the future, because there's not a lot of soccer specific or soccer focused people in Rhode Island that also happen to own a brewery or work in the alcohol industry. So just like love to see more of that. And I know he's a season ticket member, so I can't wait to see him back out without the beer or with the beer. But like either way, he's a good dude.
So yeah, I did get a chance to stop and talk to him for a few minutes. He's a great dude, and he has a bunch of watch parties over at his Monterey location for various EPL teams that he supports. If you guys want to hang out there sometimes.
Yeah, so if you don't have an away, I guess an away day supporters group here, that like whether you're Spurs or Liverpool and you want to go watch some games, he's always got it on the TV if he's open, and he does open at some crazier hours for some of the bigger games in the EPL. So definitely give them a look. And if even if you don't care about the soccer aspect, it's a great place to grab a drink. So shout out to Brian. I think just before we wrap things up in the overall fan experience, what was your take on the New Mexico United group? Or like, did you see any? They were called the Curse, which I thought was a rad name for a supporters group. Any takeaways from the SG?
Yeah, I got a chance to talk to a few of them. They were really cool people. I did think there was kind of a funny moment when it didn't look like we were going to get anything out of the match. I think it was 85th minute or so. I don't know if they were leaving, but a few of them went to the front of one of the main grandstands and were waving their New Mexico flags. It's always funny to see that kind of like harmless kind of banter, taunting. So that was funny, especially considering we equalized a few minutes later.
to New Mexico brought the worst out in us. They were definitely, it was weird for like such nice guys to have to show up and play like the bad guy role. I thought that was really fascinating because I didn't get bad guy vibes from their supporter group, and I mean, I saw some.
So I wouldn't say bad guy. They're just having fun. It wasn't mean spirited or anything.
Well, no, I don't mean that. I mean like when you want your team to win, you have to win through the perseverance of defeating your quote unquote
someone
enemy,
has
right?
to lose.
You're right. So like it was an interesting thing because you liked the fans so much that you didn't want to see them also not take away something special from it. So in some ways, like when the group's that nice, a draw kind of served both sides. We got to meet some incredible people in the curse, and then special shout out to Kevin. That's the fan that got us a lot of different New Mexico United swag and some chili sauces. We got him a taste of Rhode Island with a coffee milk jug, a box of pizza strips or party pizza, and then we got him a Buddy Cianci marinara sauce jar. So we gave him the best. We couldn't find Dell's lemonade powder mix, but hopefully he got a Dell's in the stadium because I know that was there. But really just glad he got to show up. He's a tall dude. He was. I don't normally have to look up at people, and that was a weird experience for me.
Yeah, we're both tall. He was tall, much taller than us.
I wonder if he played soccer. We should have asked. He would have been the perfect keeper in his prime. So, all right. Well, hey, speaking of New Mexico United, let's jump into this game. We've had a week almost to think about it, to inflect, to kind of get our notes and our thoughts together. Others have already started talking about it online. There's been a lot of conversation in the Discord. Are you ready to unpack this? Give the professional take. We're not professionals, but we're going to give a take on what we thought about the game that may not align with some of what our fans thought and felt about the game.
Yeah, it does feel like it's been forever since this happened.
We almost need to like start recording earlier in the week, so then we just have this first half, and then seamlessly through the magic of editing, bring it into the other half later in the week. But okay, here we go. So formation. This is the most interesting one. I think we saw it in 6 different spots all across the internet, and we saw 6 different formations listed. Everything from a 4-1-4-1, a 4-5-1, a 4-4-2. I saw a 4-4-2 out there somewhere. I forgot to tell you that one. You can say what you want, but a majority of people have thought it was a 3-4-1-2. We kind of believe that based on the way Joe Brito was positioned, but straight from Coach Cano's mouth to our podcast, that was, for all intent, a 3-5-2. So in net, we had your captain, Koke Vegas, into a 3-back line consisting of Karifa Yao, Grant Stoneman, and Frank Nodarse, which then transitioned into a 5 in the midfield of Steven Turnbull on the right wing, Clay Holstead, a forward-thrusted Joe Brito, who was more in a cam position in that 5-sided midfield, and then paralleled against a Marky Barra opposite of Clay, and then concluding with a Joje Quazera on the left wing, and then that all came together with a Noah Fuson and Chico combination up in the forward striker positions. So, before we get any further into the summary, let's get the big stuff out of the way. First and foremost, the reffing of the game. Really surprised at how hotly this was debated on Monday's Quahog Corner with FQB in his first ever live spaces on Twitter. I said some stuff in there that immediately got shot down by multiple people, and that was that head ref Jeremy Shear was a rather consistent ref in his coverage of the game. Rhode Island FC had 17 fouls on the night, with New Mexico United having 14 fouls, and we didn't actually talk about it because we ran out of time in the New Mexico predictions, but we had anticipated sharing that in Jeremy Shear's previous coverage against the NCFC and Battery game the prior week, that he had let fouls kind of run their course, with NCFC having 25 fouls on the night and the Battery having 17. So like this was kind of a open game. He did bring out cards early in that game, so we expected that there'd be some physicality, but on top of that, we didn't really know like what else we'd get since this was the first match in club history. That being said, I don't think that this game was a bad setting of refs. I think this game was more of New Mexico United understood the assignment, and Rhode Island FC had a different game plan. Before we unpack this, like, what were your initial impressions and expectations here?
Yeah, no, there's the passionate part of me that wanted to say, like, you know, he was being unfair to us. I did actually go back and rewatch some of the game to kind of, a few days later with a cooler head say like, okay, was this, what did these fouls look like? And I think that ultimately, he did ref a fair game. And the more I thought about it too, this was RFC's very first game. A lot of these guys were very eager to get out of there. RFC plays a very physical style. So like you said, I think this was New Mexico. They kind of realized how we were playing and basically used what I would call gamemanship. They weren't like diving, but they were taking the contact and they were going down because they were trying to slow the game down. If they played the game at the pace that RAFC wanted to, I think we would have smashed them. So I don't think it would be in their best interest to get into that kind of fight. They wanted to get the ball to Micheletto, and they wanted him to create. On top of that, they identified that when our wingbacks were very high, that they could play balls out wide and get in behind them. So they kind of wanted to sit back and see the field in front of them and pass, rather than trying to get in a sprinting match with us, because I don't think they would have won that.
Yeah, no, that lines up. And, it's interesting you talk about the way they would slow down the game. You could see that from the Rhode Island FC side, where they would push through the physicality when they were challenged from a New Mexico defense, right? If they were hit, if there was contact made, if there was a tackle coming, they would try to play through the tackle and keep the momentum on their side. When we got the pictures back from our photographer, Spencer Powell, we saw a bunch of times where you saw players leaping to get out of the way of tackles and challenges so that they could continue their forward momentum. That's not something that New Mexico United would have done. They would have drawn in the foul, taken the hit, and broken that game down. So I completely agree. And then even Kano said in the post-game presser, he wanted to see that physicality from his team. He encouraged it. He approved of it. Even the yellow cards that were distributed, there was nothing that he said wasn't a part of the assignment for the night. It wasn't part of the play style and the game plan that RFC came out and brought up. So I completely agree with that. And then if it wasn't enough that we thought this way, we actually went out to Rap Royalty, which is Raising Anchor podcast for the new fans of the rap fans of the pod. But Seth, the ref from New Hampshire, he concurred completely that the game was equally and fairly called. We did ask, there was one kind of questionable, I guess you could say, concern about some of the New Mexico bookings, and that was when we asked if Maples, the defender for New Mexico United, should have been booked a little bit earlier. He didn't get booked until the 61st minute, which I thought was a little too late into the game. And that was also New Mexico United's first foul, or excuse me, first yellow card issued of the game. I thought that was a bit late, but Seth really eloquently put that under the IFAB rules, there's no like set number or pattern. It's what the ref constitutes as persistent on the game, and then keeps to that perceived persistence throughout the match. And I think he did that because once Maples hit his third consecutive one, the ref went over and had a talk with him. He clearly had frustrated Fuson, who we saw Fuson lash out maybe 6 or 7 minutes later and pick up his first yellow because he did challenge or dangerously, recklessly challenge. So, I think at that point, just New Mexico United knew how to take advantage of Rhode Island FC's physicality and their emotional kind of rawness, if you will, or their toughness, and use that to their advantage. Because you're absolutely right. If we don't get those 2 yellow cards and we don't get the amount of fouls, tactical fouls that slowed down Rhode Island FC, we probably would have seen more than just Clay Holstead ringing off the post and the woodwork several times. We would have seen some goals open up in that first match, or that first half.
Yeah, thinking back on the match, I was sure that Maples had a lot more fouls than he actually did. I think what it was is that his fouls were very smart and he stopped us from attacking. So we kind of took it more as this is a bigger offense. It's the tactical foul problem that people hate to see when, a team is about to break through in the midfield and someone will just kind of, stop that chance from going through. And speaking of physicality, I forget exactly what, maybe the 50th minute or something, where there was I don't want to call it a fight, but a little scuffle kind of broke out between a few of the players.
So that happened. That happened almost in the 70th. That was when Micheletto, frustrated that Sadie had gotten past him and was on a tear to the goal, Micheletto went through him from behind, and after he dropped Sadie, Connor McGlynn was in Micheletto's face, and then suddenly three other Rhode Island FC players were right there, ready to commit murder in front of 5,000 plus fans.
There's an amazing picture of Turnbull taunting one of their players. It's iconic.
I think that's why Turnbull got man of the match, because while he had a very solid showing for the day, I wouldn't say that he was neither the main provider defensively or offensively. I think there were better players positioned to kind of earn that nod. But when you, in front of your supporters group, show a veteran of the league, because remember that Turnbull's from the MLS, so this is his first USL outing, you go up and say, hey, you're shorter than me and I'm better than you, and you do that in front of your diehard crazies, you're getting man of the match no matter what.
Yeah, I think it's the spirit of the team that he really embodied there, because we were very physical and fast and wanted to attack, and they were just trying to stifle us.
Right. So then let's get into some of the other obvious ones real fast, because I don't want to talk about it later and then have it derail the conversation. The poll on the broadcast, look, we get it. This is USL. That broadcast tower is either built to football standards where they don't have to pan as deep because of the way the camera angles would be set, or there was just bad communication on how that tower was erected. So I was out there today. I still saw the tower, but they have 2 more weeks before they have to figure that out. Hopefully they do some sort of course correction so that doesn't become a running joke for the season. But listen, it didn't. If you were there live, it didn't affect you at all.
Yeah, maybe just more reason to go out and secure some tickets.
Exactly. And if you were watching it from a broadcast and you could have gone to the game, then shame on you. I will even say, by the way, speaking of, I saw 6 fans go up to the ticket box office when I was getting credentials and expect that they could pick up or like buy tickets day of. So they parked. I don't know if they paid for the parking, but then they walked up and everyone was like, this is a sold out event. Where did you expect to get tickets? Like, again, I don't know if they were just hoping and like trying to get in, and maybe because there wasn't really anything left on SeatGeek either, but like the kind of complexity of walking into an event, and I think it said sold out all over the place, and then still trying to get tickets from a ticket box office. That was a really weird thing to see. So for fans in the future, expect more and more of these games to start selling out, especially if the club does really well. Don't be that person that shows up with your date or your family and tries to buy tickets day of. It will not work out in your favor.
Maybe hearing all the angry people on Facebook trash talk it, they're like, no one's going to be there. I can just show up.
Maybe. I mean, hey, that's a fair point. So besides the poll, was there anything else that you saw? Because I know you rewatched the broadcast. I did not. Anything else in that besides that you want to bring up for fans?
No, I thought overall they did a pretty good job. There was a few hiccups in the first few minutes, but nothing nearly as bad as that New Mexico game from the previous week where they were playing audio from another match. It was just like the screen cut out for like a second. So, but overall pretty good. I was listening to, I think it was the most recent USL show podcast, and they were talking about a match of the ones that get to CBS. And they said the production on those is very good. So I'll be looking forward to maybe checking one of those out. And then eventually we do have one for one of our away matches.
Yeah, against Birmingham. I was really impressed with the broadcast people. I watched the replay of the goal and some of the play-by-play stuff that wasn't done by Mike D on the FM broadcast. I don't know the names. I actually haven't tracked that down. I haven't chased those, but whoever our broadcasters were, they were phenomenal, because I've heard some of the other broadcasts as I've done my homework in the league, and there's no one bad. I mean, any coverage is good coverage in my opinion at this level. But I think whoever did the call and the play-by-play was pretty exceptional on the day. So appreciate them rising to the occasion and just delivering a great experience. So let's jump into this. And before we start breaking down the halves, I just want to kind of preface with listeners that this is kind of one of those games where the stats tell one thing, but the eyeball test of the results and the performance on the pitch don't necessarily align. You're going to hear a lot today about a dominating performance. You're going to hear a lot about how Rhode Island FC basically did everything right. And sometimes when you do everything right, you can still not succeed. And I think that's really a case of, you can call it lady luck, you can call it just didn't go their way. But I really do believe that Rhode Island FC was robbed of a victory here, and I don't even think they were robbed of their own performance. I think, if you ask the players, if you ask coach, they'll say, hey, if you don't put the ball in the back of the net, you're not going to win games. But like when you look at what Rhode Island FC did, they not only made club history, but they also put on some numbers in terms of USL history and how they really played their first game. This is definitely a shot fired across the league that will have people paying much more closer attention to Rhode Island FC to understand, is this the real deal or is this a fluke? But like as far as what I'm seeing, the technicals, the patterns, the behaviors, this is for all intent and purpose going to be a phenomenal year for Rhode Island FC. So, first half, like we said, there's a dominating performance. Rhode Island FC outshot New Mexico United 14-2 with only 47% of the possession, and I think of that, 40% of the possession was in New Mexico United's third. So they played a high press line. They played a counterattacking, well, not counterattacking, but they played a high risk, high reward type of offensive defensive tackle press. And they were able to put New Mexico United on their heels for basically the first 45 minutes of the game. So much so that New Mexico United had 0 shots on goal in the first half. And if you had seen this team play against the Supporter Shield winning Riverhounds the week before, this was not the same team that showed up to play in North Smithfield, Rhode Island.
Yeah, when we were watching that game, clearly New Mexico was significantly better, but they are also having some troubles over there, the Riverhounds.
So I think a lot of this performance does come off of the back of Clay Holstead, who was a beast. He compiled a 78% pass completion on the night. He won 3 tackles, made over 12 recoveries, won 5 of his 7 duels. And when you looked at his percentage of pass completion, where he saw the ball suffer was in the long passes or the final third passes as he was trying to create chances to get into the likes of Joe Brito and Chico, right? This was not, sometimes, and you've said this in the past, like sometimes you just pass the ball back and forth to pad the stats, but all of his distribution in his heat map was excellent. The only place where he suffered anything, and I would want a center midfielder of any capacity to only lose on those passes where he can't connect the final offense to the midfield. Like I didn't see Holstead do anything wrong in the night, except maybe he just needed his shots to shank a little, like 3 degrees to the right instead of where they landed. Was he? We talked, like, we think he's the man of the match. What was your thoughts on Clay Holstead?
Yeah, he was everywhere. After the Providence College game, I wasn't sure, like, is this just because they're playing a college team, like where we sat on him in terms of his capabilities, but he went out there and showed that, like, he's the real deal.
Clay Holstead, if you had told me based on the Providence College scrimmage that our starting left center back was going to be a triple threat in the center midfield space for our home opener, I would have said you're crazy. Not because of any injuries, just because we didn't see him do any of this in the Providence College match. He played defensively, he kept shape, and then he swapped with Alves, and then it was kind of just like distribution channel to the wings to get Steven Turnbull fed. I didn't see any of this. I saw Brito and Ibarra bigger on the night at Providence. I didn't see this version of Holstead on that game day.
We definitely saw a lot of energy from him in the Providence College game, but not the same, like, attacking threat that he brought to this. He took that energy and he just, like, turned it to 11. So
do you think that was coach's plan? I mean, we've talked multiple times that there's a flexibility that Kano Ball is looking for when it comes to these players and their primary assignment and then their, let's call it, their secondary or aux assignment. Is there more of this in the future for players, or is this Kano had the formations right and was just trying to throw the scouting reports off before game one? Because I don't see how Holstead doesn't play anything but this type of role moving forward. But again, you look at his pedigree, you look at his history. He has defensive roles in his history of being a right back or a center back. What's your take on, is this still experimentation, or has Holstead, now being a team of the week player, having been the kind of unsung hero, or not unsung, but he was the hero and the man of the match for the night, is he earned his starting 11, and has he ended up in the position of this is his role moving forward?
If he plays the way that he did this past Saturday against New Mexico, I think he will find himself in the starting 11 more often than not. Coach wants people to, he wants them to defend. I mean, there are even a few times where I remember seeing Chico come all the way back to our own third to reclaim a ball. I think maybe because he lost it and he felt he needed to kind of get it back, but not all strikers do that. Fuson was everywhere.
Let's talk about that. In the first half, 17 tackles in just the first half. Rhode Island FC, the way they were playing, they were this high risk, high reward. They weren't possession based. We saw that they had less possession than New Mexico United. They were not afraid to move the ball forward and lose it. And if they lost it, they were like just tackling right back into it. They had to get the ball back as fast as possible. In fact, so much so that they registered 27 total tackles in their season opener, which is the third most tackles in USL Championship history during any regular season game. So like I've never seen a team outside of the EPL and La Liga play that style of like, hey, we don't need to have the ball at our feet, but we're going to come and get that ball as fast as possible. Like that was a really big surprise on the night to watch that happen.
You don't see this kind of intensity all the time, but I think it's starting to become more the norm. Columbus Crew, coach, one of Coach's friends, they often play a similar style. Maybe it's just the trend that is slowly starting to creep over here, and maybe sooner or later everyone else will be copying us.
Speaking of Wilfried Nancy and the Columbus Crew, I hope next year, and also the fact that owner Mikey Parkhurst, who was at the game, we got a picture with him. I hope that maybe in the future we get a scrimmage against the Columbus Crew, just for the amount of 2 players we have, and then just the fact that like they're friends. That'd be a fun.
That might
experiment.
be cool, yeah, like a little friendly kind of thing.
Definitely. So then let's get into the second half here. So first half, Rhode Island FC is doing everything right, out tackle, outshot, outpassed, out everything, with the exception of outscored after a couple of attempts on net, which were saved by goalkeeper Tim Backus for the New Mexico United side. And then, of course, those infamous now shots that rang off of the woodwork for Clay Holstead. So then we go to second half, and New Mexico United comes out a completely different team. They made some major adjustments, and they did so without changing players. They just changed their tactics. They knew that the physicality and the speed was not something that they were going to be able to control. So they moved into intense possession. They made sure that they were not going, if they were going to lose the ball, they were losing it in a place where they were set up to defend and contain. They were happier to go backwards with their ball. There was a ton of possession in their final third, versus moving the ball forward in the second half. And they sat and they waited for a Rhode Island FC team to start to kind of show, I don't want to say cracks in the armor, but to show the fatigue of first game nerves, what have you, and make some mistakes. And then that's exactly what happened. After Connor McGlynn subbed in for Joe Brito in the 63rd, right into the 68th, we saw the RFC give up you said it was somewhat of a sloppy goal. And some people even said that corner or that set piece shouldn't have even happened to begin with, that led to the goal. I don't know about that so much, but we give up the first goal in club history after we had just this commanding performance for almost 70 minutes of the match. Is that a sign of fatigue on the players? Is that a sign of nerve? Or is that just one of those things that sometimes that's what happens?
Maybe a little bit of all the above. Sometimes these things just happen. I also think there's a very good chance, being the first game, defensively, when I rewatched the goal, it kind of seemed like maybe there was a little issue in terms of positioning with Koke and maybe some of the center backs that will get better over time. Because I think this was probably an avoidable goal, but it happens. It was the only remarkable level of XG so far that New Mexico United had created in the game this far. So we did very well to limit their chances.
Yeah, and again, to reinforce what we saw in their outing against the Riverhounds, they really generated almost nothing from the run of play or any kind of build-up for that matter. So I think you're spot on. I think sometimes things just won't go your way. And that's why set piece tactics, that's why corner kick tactics are a thing, right? Like you can be good in possession, you can be good in transition, and you can be good in movement, but sometimes when players do certain things and you don't have enough time under your belt, that's the kind of stuff that will open you up to risk. I think that if maybe Koke punches that out a little bit harder instead of slapping it down, maybe we wouldn't have seen the ball drop to Maple's feet and tap that in. But that's the land of what ifs. And honestly, too, if any of the goals that Chico, that Fuson, and that Holstead had tried to generate had gone in, we would have been at a 0-0 situation or a 1-1 situation at that point instead of being down one. So they score the goal. We make some subs. We bring in Prince Sadie and Alves for a swap on Ibarra and Nodarse. And coach basically, and he said this in the after game presser, the whole mentality was here that if we went down one, we were going to fight till a dying breath to do everything we could to correct the situation. And that's exactly what we saw. I think that this team, while as good as they were with Holstead kind of captaining that center mid area, I think it was a completely different experience once we saw the likes of McGlynn and Sadie kind of take command of that central midfield area. I saw a willingness where maybe Brito was kind of told or assigned to stay high. I saw McGlynn, if it was a like for like swap, I saw him kind of moving all over. He suddenly was in a 6 position, an 8, a 10. Like the ball started getting distributed centrally through him versus the ball going to a fixed point where Brito was, which by the way, with Brito in the position he was and getting coverage between him and some of the dual overlapping on Chico, that's I think what allowed Holstead to float into those gaps. But once McGlynn showed up, you could kind of just see where the threats were going to be generated from. And with Sadie's speed, with Quizera and Turnbull still stretching on out wide, and then Fuson, who really was just everywhere. When you look at his heat map, oh my gosh, I'm pretty sure he played every single position on that pitch except for keeper. I mean, it just you could feel that something was in the air, something was going to change, and whether that was because Defiance was there just drumming. Which, by the way, we didn't say this in the earlier part. I don't think there's a better supporter group than the Defiant 1636 right now. And I'm not being biased when I say that. I watched a lot of games, both in the USL and the MLS, and either it's a one-off fluke and they're early and we'll see what happens, but I swear their energy, their drums, I don't think I've heard a more passionate and louder fan base in a very long time in soccer in this country.
Yeah, when it comes to supporter groups in this country, I love a lot of them. I want to see people excited and love for soccer, but sometimes the product is not always there. The Defiance boys really brought it. You know, like you said, maybe we're a little biased, but in terms of longevity, they went the whole match, right? And then you can hear them on the TV as well. So, challenge to the other guys out there.
Yeah, so we have the swaps. We're starting to see some of these other key players coming in. It leads to one final swap after for Mark Doyle comes in to replace Quizera, but that's the player for player. But then we see Fuson actually drop into Quizera's role, and Doyle takes the forward position. And then minutes later, in stoppage time, and again, what could only be a storyline ending for this club. Ball comes into Fuson, who crosses it to a Mark Doyle, who's like just go drilling in. He's going to run through that net.
In the box.
He is going to run through that net with the ball or without it. And Chris Gloucester from New Mexico United tries to make a kind of diving kick out, and instead collects the ball right before it hits Doyle's feet and puts it in for an own goal in the dying seconds to score the club's first goal in Rhode Island FC history. Chris Gloucester, everyone. Rhode Island FC legend. And again, we already talked about whether it was Doyle's goal or not, but like without Doyle just crashing like that, the goal doesn't happen. The entire stadium just goes bananas. The noise was already loud, and then like I had the audio spectrum on for the podcast. Like everything was in the red. We heard the Mike D, who was broadcasting from the back of the fans. Like his audio was complete garbage because of that, in a good way. and you just saw everyone lose their mind. Psycho Killer from the Talking Heads goes off. There's fireworks that explode, and they call it for Doyle. At the time, we celebrated it, the Irishman. We didn't know better at the time. And listen, you can call it an equalizer, but Mark Doyle, in the moment, became the most important man in Rhode Island, and we had the governor there.
We won.
We had a mayor
1-1.
there. And, yeah, we won 1-1. That's a tattoo right there. We won 1-1. And it was just electric. And kudos to the fans of Rhode Island FC. They got it. They knew what it meant. We walked away knowing that it was a tie game. We got 1 point, but the IQ level of the fans at that stadium, they knew what that meant. They knew how important it was. They knew how special it was. And it was electric. It was so important. And honestly, too, if that had happened the other way, where we had scored early on, and then New Mexico United tied it in the dying seconds,
that would have been deflating.
That would have been, it would have had like a vampire effect. It would have sucked all of the soul and energy. Like, fans may have been like, well, I knew this was going to happen. I'm not going to come back ever again. Like, you couldn't have asked, outside of a win, you could not have asked for a better storyline than a Mark Doyle / Chris Gloucester own goal with 2 minutes to go in stoppage time. I'm so incredibly proud that this club clawed one back. They fought for it to the end. And while it's not the result, again, you're going to see that this year in both USL and just the way soccer works. Sometimes you can do everything right, and the stats can say you did everything right, and it'll still be a draw or potentially a loss. And I as outside of that win, I couldn't ask for something else. How about you? Any kind of closing thoughts on that?
The only thing maybe would have been nice if the wind wasn't so bad. Defiance had set off a blue flare. It would have been cool to see them in a blue cloud, but you saw it immediately get blown away.
I went down to do the tweet because I wasn't sure if the club was doing game play-by-plays on Twitter, and a lot of fans actually thanked me afterwards for doing that. I'm not going to do that for the away games, by the way. I'm just going to enjoy the game as a fan, but I was down typing everything out. I looked up and the smoke was already gone. I was like, did they not get allowed to use it? Like, no, it showed up and it blew away. So that's just, you can't fight the wind there.
Yeah, this is what it is there. But overall, it, like you said, that the way that the team ended it was phenomenal.
So we know who the player of the game was in our opinion. It was Clay Holstead. I think even Fatmob recognized he was the man of the match. Who was the player that we needed to see more of that didn't either have a good game or just didn't get to play the game that they wanted to play? Who would you expect a better performance out of for the game in Monterey?
I don't want to say he had a bad performance, but there was a lot of expectations with Albert Diqua coming in.
Oh, you used his full name like you're disappointed. You didn't use Chico. That's like when your parents mad at you and they use their full name. Just Albert Diqua.
I don't think, though, that it was from a lack of effort. I just think that maybe we didn't get the ball to him. I think that nerves probably played into it too. We may have talked about this earlier, but I think that some of the reason why some of the stuff wasn't maybe going our way or falling the direction we wanted it to was just because it was a big event. It was the first game in Rhode Island's history. So I think that maybe they were not as relaxed as they could be and not as calm, and maybe ended up just either, putting a little too much power on it, maybe pushing themselves a little too hard, and it just kind of, that's why I think we saw the game that we did. You see a very physical game. You saw tempers flare when stuff wasn't going their way. So I think that they just need to just cool it down. We see what they do. We understand the type of game that they're going to play, and I imagine that it's going to, if they keep playing this way, I think that they're going to do very well this season.
I think that's fair. I will counter, or at least add, that we know that solid defensively minded teams are going to have to figure out how to contain the likes of Chico, right? We saw that in his performance numbers last year. On the teams that ignored him or didn't have a game plan, he just put on...
Yeah, he trashed him.
Yeah. And then on the teams that kind of knew or got the job done against him, he was mostly silent for the game. So I don't know if this was New Mexico United having a performance or if Chico just wasn't in that space yet. But additionally, when you looked at kind of the game plan of the day, Fuson was all over the map, right? Like his heat map showed that he played just about every role. And then he even swapped in for Quizera in the dying minutes of the game. I'm not sure that Chico didn't do enough, because if it wasn't Holstead on the ball in the final third, I'm like fairly confident it was Fuson who had his foot at it. And knowing that those two players combined for a majority of the touches, shots, and passes, it could have been that Chico was drawing a lot of pressure onto himself, allowing these other players to move into lanes and space to try to take advantage and capitalize on goals for Rhode Island FC. And coach did say that, where if he's not shooting and scoring, he's making the runs that are going to pull defenders. So it's hard to look for something when you're trying to track the ball and look at the performance on the night. And it's too early for me to say that he didn't do exactly what coach expected of him. But when you do sign the Golden Boot winner, you do want to see him get on the score sheet as often as possible. So that's more kind of wait and see for me. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, and I want to reiterate, I don't think he had a bad game at all. It's unfortunate, though, like strikers of this caliber get rated on goals. So I just think to prove to everyone else that he's going to have to make sure that he starts grabbing himself a few. Also, to be fair to him, he did join the group later than everyone else, so he hasn't had as much time with the team as the rest of the boys have. So there could just be like, that kind of slight level of communication on the field that, he'll get there.
Before we move on, what's your key takeaway? What's the too long didn't listen? What's the main blueprint that you want to share with listeners?
Just so in case you guys didn't know, New Mexico's goalkeeper Tim Bacchus is ranked second all-time in saves and shutouts. So he did have a good game against us. 5-3-2 seemed like everything was almost there, as if, we're just a step away from scoring. But when the changes happened later on in the game and we switched to a 4-3-3, it kind of seemed like everything clicked. So maybe that's the way going forward. RAFC generated 1.53 XG. Some, as you could say, as high as 2, but not every place counts own goals, compared to New Mexico's 1.3. So ultimately, maybe it's fair. At the same time, because it was an own goal, maybe we should have won. The goal we scored was credited as an own goal, but that doesn't happen if Mark Doyle isn't there. So should I get a jersey that has number 90 on it with OG? For like own goal?
90 plus and then OG. I love it. Let's get one of your kits that you have and just get that printed on the back.
I don't think they can do the plus, but
they can do anything. It's just vinyl. Then they just cut it where we need it, and then boom, it's done. For us, Jason, they'll make us anything.
They'll make it happen.
All right, really quick, my breakdown on a TLDL is, again, RFC registered 27 tackles in their season opener. I was worried about the defense. That was a big call out for me, as I didn't know if this team could size up and square up accordingly. I no longer have that concern, considering we played a 3-back line too, where we opened ourselves to risk, especially with a high back line. That kind of block with those defenders, you have to be good to do that. And so the likes of Karifa Yao, I think, had an excellent game. Frank Nodarce had a great game. Grant Stoneman, also exceptional. I can't stop thinking about someone from the Loyal saying he's a yellow card generator, and he did get a yellow on the match. So I'll be watching that closely. But otherwise, I think they had an incredible game defensively. So much so also, and credit to the midfield, they did an amazing job shutting down Micheletto. He was supposed to be the biggest threat from New Mexico United, and he was mostly removed from the game for long sprints. So I was very proud and very impressed with seeing how we took the most dangerous piece off the board. So those are kind of my two defensive takes. And then I listen, I've said it in the Wednesday wrong predictions now, wrong Wednesdays, put that in the books. I think the 4-3-3 is still coming. I think we're playing this 3-5-2 out of necessity for player fitness and player health right now. I don't think this is what coach really wants to play. I will tell you in a second in the transition to the Monterey Bay game that we'll probably see more of the 3-5-2, but I still think that a 4-3-3, you saw it at the end. You saw what the potential could be with the right players in the squad out there on the pitch. The 4-3-3 is coming, and we just need to be ready for it. That being said, RIFC actually dropped a spot. Go figure. You get a point, and you go down. So we dropped a spot in the Eastern Conference, dropping to 10th place. So again, we had 0 points. We were in 9th. We get 1 point. We're now in 10th. And I have issues with this because when I looked at it, some places had us ranked 11th because there's a couple teams that have 1 point right now, and some listed it by alphabetical order. Some listed it by the amount of games that have been played. So they have 1 tie and 1 loss. Some listed it where if you had more goals than the other team. So I think Tampa Bay had a 2-2 against San Antonio. So they were above us. But in the USL website, it looks like it's just first your points and then it's alphabetical. But here we go. I'm going to fuel the conspiracy theories that Tampa Bay is a inside agent for the league. They're above us in 9th, and we have the same stats. And last time I checked in the alphabet, R is before the letter T, so we should be in 9th. So this is clearly collusion. USL favors their darlings down the road. I'm not having it, but for some reason we went down. But while we go down in the conference points, we did rise to the power rankings. And power rankings totally matter when it's week 2 of a season, right? Because you can judge so much. So we move from 19th to 17th, which is interesting because now we'll be taking on, while we're undefeated, ranked 17th in the power rankings, we'll be taking on the equally undefeated Monterey Bay FC, which currently sit 4th in the Western Conference and 8th in the overall power rankings. So are you ready to unpack Rhode Island FC versus Monterey Bay FC this Sunday at 6 p.m.? Sunday.
Yeah, let's see what we got ourselves into here against Monterey Bay FC.
So what we know. So the club's flying out tomorrow I think it's tomorrow morning. They, when you go East Coast to West Coast, you usually want to fly out as early as possible to make sure you can kind of get situated. The club is flying out tomorrow morning, Friday, as you're listening to this podcast, and they'll be arriving. I don't know where they're actually going into. I'm assuming it's the San Jose area. I think that's the closest major airport to get down to the likes of Monterey Bay, but no real clue where they're flying into. And then they'll be playing the game on Sunday. More than likely, they'll get on a plane that evening and either do a red eye and get back early Monday, or if they want to put the players and get rest, either way, I can see them showing up at like 12:30 in the morning on Monday morning, or they'll sleep the night in a hotel and they'll be back midday Monday. Listen, the team, they want to get home to their families. They don't want to be living out of a hotel. So I don't know when they're back, but I do know that they are flying out tomorrow. And they'll be facing off against Monterey Bay, who is coming off of a dominant win against the current USL champions, Phoenix Rising, in a game last week that makes me wonder if our combined father, Papa Brett Johnson, needs to go back to Phoenix and remind them how a team needs to win a game, because, oh my gosh, Phoenix looks terrible. And I know they have some things going against them, but they do not look like the former champion selves that they were just a few months ago.
Not only did they lose their coach, they lost 3 of their key players. And if you're not going to replace them, especially considering that they just kind of snuck into the playoffs, and then it was like, are they going to do this? They just keep winning.
I mean, Jason, we can't like Phoenix because they killed the loyal.
Oh,
They're our stepbrother in Brett Johnson's other ownership, which, by the way, I know I made the joke a second ago about Papa Johnson, but did you see the tweet from the fan from Phoenix Rising?
Oh, yeah, he was talking smack and didn't even know who Brett Johnson was.
So for those of you that weren't following the Twitter fight after we drew, a lot of the supporters groups and Stan accounts that follow the league wanted to put Rhode Island FC in their place. So they were trying to they're trying to crash our party, crash our celebration. And Phoenix just came out swinging and said, like, what's the big deal? Like, you haven't won anything yet. And all I did was remind them that, hey, listen, like, our dad loves us more now. He's found a better family, and you just have to be okay with it. And he's like, who's Brett Johnson? And then the entire internet just kind of was like, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. But having said that, with Phoenix specifically, yes, they have lost their coach. Yes, they have lost players. But you know what, Jason? We didn't have a coach in 2023 until we did. We didn't have 3 players until we did. So, like, for all intent and purpose, we built a team from the ashes, from the scratch.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying we shouldn't look at them as the USL champs until they prove it at this point, because it doesn't look like they are a shell of themselves. It's not the same team as last year. So until we see them coming out and smash someone, I'm just gonna assume that they're a slight unknown right now, but a lower end of the table unknown.
So this isn't a Phoenix call. This is going to be Monterey Bay. So we'll get to Phoenix in a couple of weeks in April. But for the time being, let's jump straight into this. So first and foremost, injury reports. We were able to break to fans last week that JJ Williams, it's been officially reported now that he is recovering from a sports hernia injury. We've known that he has not been seen in any kind of physical practice since the media day. So actually before his trip to Florida. So if you know anything about sports hernia injuries, like what we know about them is they typically take 8 weeks to heal, and then there's usually another 12 weeks of rehab to get someone back to the fitness levels that they need to be. We don't know where he is at on that journey. So even if you do the math and say he had surgery the day before media, which he was standing around and walking, so I don't think that was the case. So even if we go plus 1 week, he's somewhere between 8 to 10 weeks before we would see him back into the squad. That's just an estimate on our part. That is no physical confirmation from the club. If there's a physio that's listening to us that wants to kind of walk us through that recovery path so we could get a little more specific, we do know we saw JJ today doing laps around the field. He wasn't actively practicing. So we don't know where that might be in his recovery journey. Love to learn that more so we can get a little bit more specific. We also know that Amos Shapiro-Thompson will not be in making the trip to Monterey Bay. He has suffered some sort of injury. That's why he was a scratch for the game against New Mexico United, and he wasn't even at training today. So whatever's going on with him, whether it's a knock or something more significant, consider him not being available, which is a shame because I really want to see Amos take the pitch. He's kind of been like a spokesperson, a role model for the club, and I just want to make sure, I want to see him be able to eventually show up and just say hi to fans and demonstrate his skills. And then the surprise of the day, we didn't see Clay Holstead at practice today. We kept looking for him because we wanted to do an interview, and he wasn't available. When we asked the team, they didn't have a comment on it. We don't know if that is an injury, if that's an illness, but they didn't want to comment, and that makes sense, right? Because there are clubs that may listen to this podcast, and there are teams that may be trying to plan and prep for a team of the week performance like Clay Holstead had. So we don't know yet what will happen. We have nothing we can report in on for that, but we did notice that a couple fans said that they saw him not in the best shape after the New Mexico United game. I didn't see that. We would have asked that, or we would have pursued that from coach. So we're not really sure what's going on with Clay. So he's kind of a questionable at this point. So maybe we'll see.
Like a knock, a day-to-day kind of thing.
Could be. We don't know. But yeah, so that's questionable for the game, but we did not see him out there at practice today. So more to unpack on that one, and we'll find out on the starting 11 on Sunday. In terms of Monterey Bay and their injuries, so we had a great conversation with Noah Telford from the MBFC discussion on Instagram. He has a Instagram, he has a Facebook. He's really great at covering Monterey Bay. He also is a co-host on the USL Way, which is a all-league show. So if you want to give him some love, follow him on all of his socials or listen to him on the USL Way. He wasn't able to join the podcast because of the way we were recording this, but we were able to kind of get some information. So we can expect that Monterey Bay will not have the likes of potentially Chase Boone, Xavi, I'm not even going to say that, Ganalte? Xavi Ganalte? Is that right? We're going to say Xavi Ganalte.
Your guess is as best as mine.
Grant Robinson, who is a starting left back, they were all out. Robinson being a late scratch because he took a knock against El Paso. He could potentially play, but this is going to be one of those things where, again, these are all questionable. They're not necessarily guaranteed to be out. Take that for what it's worth. If you're following the league a little bit more in depth, if you have no idea about these names that I'm saying, that's okay too. And then with Boone, Boone did start most of the preseason, but when he suffered this ankle injury, it's questionable if he'll be ready to return. And then, with an injury, it's not just like, oh, my ankle's healed. It's, do I have enough fitness ready? Because we're seeing the same with the likes of Mark Doyle, who has returned from his injuries, Prince Sadie, and Connor McGlynn. And we'll talk about the role they'll play in the game in a little bit. And then finally, there's Chuy Enriquez, who has been starting on the right side. He looks really good, but that's a contention for Boone and whether or not he'll start. So it'll be interesting to see who gets the start between the two of them. So let's move into formations. So again, predictions guaranteed to be wrong. I said a 4-3-3 on Wednesday. I knew the trouble I was inviting upon myself. I don't think it's going to be a 4-3-3. My guess is, especially after the conversations that we had with Coach today, we're going to see a 3-5-2 again. And there's a couple of reasons behind that. But to start, I think it's going to be Krifa Yao, Grant Stoneman, and Darce in the back again. It's basically going to be the same lineup. The only change here, I think, is that we see Connor McGlynn come in for Holstead. And we see that because of two things. One, we don't know where Holstead is right now. He's questionable in our minds. So we have to anticipate that if he's not there, McGlynn is the natural. McGlynn should play in place of Brito, I think, or at least swap in like a central part of that line, and maybe Brito stays as a cam. I don't really know. But without Holstead being confirmed, it's a natural fit for McGlynn. He got the most minutes of the subs. He came in the earliest. He plays a central role that's important for this kind of spacing. So it's my guess that McGlynn gets the start there. So it's Steven Turnbull, McGlynn, Brito, Ibarra, and Quezera in that mid, and then Fuson and Chico again in that starting two. Does that line up with you?
I think so. My only concern is if we're just gonna assume for now that maybe Clay Holstead won't play, I just don't know where Connor McGlynn is in terms of fitness. You're right, he did play the most, but is he ready to play a full game? So with that being said, do you start him, or maybe do you just give him a longer? Like, do you bring him in at halftime?
No, I start him. And he ran for 40. I mean, we saw him up through Florida. We just didn't see him in the Bermuda, so he's been getting the minutes. If he was just in like rest and recovery, I start him, get him 60, get him 65, and then pull him and bring in the likes of another center midfielder. I wouldn't want to chase the game like we had to chase against New Mexico United. We saw the impact of players that matter coming in late to the game, but like I don't think it's a viable strategy to chase games like that, especially when we're away.
That's fair. I think depending on how the game goes, I wouldn't be surprised to see Gabriel Alves maybe making an appearance in the midfield, especially if Holstead is out. You know, he can lock down one of those kind of center mid positions, especially if we do bring Sadie in and Doyle. They are more attacking options. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that.
So then let me ask this question. I'm high on the 4-3-3. I think you feel the same way to a certain degree. Are we playing this 3-5-2 out of a lack of the players that coach wants to start? Or are we doing more of this as a response? Because when we'll unpack Monterey Bay's formation in a second, but it's very similar to what New Mexico United did play. And if it isn't broke, don't fix it.
I think it's like twofold. I think potentially he is maybe playing this because this fits a lot of the players that are at 100% health right now. But coach constantly likes to talk about flexibility. So I just don't think he wants to hamstring himself into being that one-trick pony. Even when we change formation, the style and tactics are still the same. It's attacking, it's forward moving, they're pressing. You know, we're seeing a lot of the same actions. It's just what areas of the field are they lining up in? And is that because of the opponent, or is it because of the players that he has? I just think he wants that flexibility. If everyone was healthy, I think we probably would have started with a 4-3-3 though.
So you're saying that coach wants to be predictably unpredictable.
Yep.
He wants to M. Night Shyamalan every single formation he ever does. I love it. So speaking of Monterey Bay, their formation, we pulled up FOTMob, and they've been using a combination of either a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. Again, the 4-2-3-1 was what they most recently used in success against Phoenix, whereas the 4-3-3 only got them a draw against El Paso. So I anticipate, again, if it isn't broke, but anticipate that they'll use that 4-2-3-1. That works out for us because that's more of what we saw against New Mexico United. So this is going to be kind of a second level test of the success of our 3-5-2. And it'll be really interesting to see where things kind of shape out as we take this game on the road. Now, that being said, we did get some kind of watch outs for players to watch in the Monterey Bay game. And first and foremost, number one player on the watch list is Tristan Traeger. We watched him in the highlights. He came on as a substitute player, and he completely turned the game upside down. This is a kid who, it doesn't matter if he's starting or not, he's going to be dangerous. He scored the late equalizer against El Paso. That was that run of the play game we saw. And he knows how to hold the ball where he needs to. And he really added a new dynamic against Phoenix when he came off of the bench there. So he may not be a starter, but it's definitely a player that we want to watch out for. Did you see, was that transition counter goal against El Paso from Traeger, was that something that was born out of game plan and tactics, or was that born out of just one single player individually creating and getting the ball up the field?
I think if I remember it correctly, it kind of sloppy defending, wasn't it? Like a bad pass.
Can't give Traeger credit for nothing, huh? You just got to blame Train Gang? Okay.
No.
The New Mexico United fans would be proud of you right now.
I think this is something that's very similar to what we saw in the New Mexico game, where Micheletto threaded the ball up through the midfield to, I forget their other, is it Jacobo?
Jacobo Reyes, yeah.
Yeah, up to Jacobo Reyes, who then fed it up to the striker. Considering they line up in a very similar formation, I would expect a very similar game from them in terms of where they are at in their season. They have done pretty well so far, but I just don't know if they're the real deal or not yet.
Right. And then I would say the other player to watch out for is Rafael Baca in the midfield. He bags the goal against Phoenix. Looked extremely comfortable starting out of the back line, almost forming a 3-5 to distribute and play out the back. He does have the odd turnover in him at times, according to Noah from NBC FC Discussion, but he's been playing solid. He doesn't give the ball away a lot in terrible positions. So I think he's one of those players that tries to create and to generate momentum. And when he does lose it, it's like calculated, disciplined turnovers where his defensive line can pick him back up and move it through. He seems like a solid player that's going to help marshal this team to move attacks up the pitch. And we saw it against Phoenix. I almost want to kind of just dovetail right now into, we know that Monterey Bay aims to be a counterattacking team. They absorb pressure. They let teams come in deep and then counter and move back against them. I have to ask, is this Monterey Bay team the real deal? You know, they're in fourth in the West. They're like eighth in power rankings. Are they real because they're playing quality matches, or are they playing quality opponents, or is it neither of those? And this team is getting points where they need to for the time being, but they haven't really been tested yet. What's your take on this?
I think we haven't seen them really tested yet. Like we talked about a few minutes ago, Phoenix is kind of shambles. I don't know where I am on Train Gang. You know, they kind of fizzled out towards the end of last season.
They have 2 losses, 1 tie, and they've played more matches than any other team right now in the USL. They have not left the station yet.
Didn't they also just play a friendly against FC Juarez too?
I think so. What was the joke we made last year? The wheels have come off of this train, and it's early.
Yeah, so I'm not so sure if this Monterey Bay team has been tested yet. At the end of the day, it still does take some talent to score the goals. The goal against Phoenix was Phoenix being, a bit sloppy at the back, which is something not characteristic of them, especially Rios Novo and I forget the center back, but they've both been there for a while. They're both pretty solid, and it was just kind of them being silly. You saw in that game, though, they still created a lot of chances. So there is talent in this team. It's just, are they only going to be able to beat up on, the droves of the league?
You're saying, are they only punching down?
Yeah,
are they
yeah. So that I think remains to be seen.
Okay. Well, we know that the ref for this game will be Alexis de Silva. Alexis called the Tampa San Antonio game, and brought out the yellow cards early. There was still a ton of fouls on the night, but within the 14th minute, there were yellow cards, and they were pretty consistent for the rest of the night with 8 cards over the course of the evening, with both teams getting 4 aside. So if that's any indication of how Alexis wants to control this game, we should see, players understand the system very early on. So physicality could hurt Rhode Island FC here again, or it could be one of those things where they know the expectations and can match a game plan according to that. So listen, this is a first test. It's an away game. It's a very long trip for this club. It's a lot of firsts. What does this club need to get done or do differently or do the same to secure a W here on the road?
I think they need to feed Chico. Like I said,
feed me, Chico.
I don't think he had a bad game, but he was the top scorer last year. I think we need to make sure that he is getting himself into some good positions, which he clearly knows how to do. So we just got to get him the ball at the right spot. I think that they need to stick to their game plan in terms of like their style of play. Clearly, RAFC is a very physical attacking team. I don't like the idea of them going there and saying this is an away game and maybe toning that down. I think the time for that would maybe be later in the season if we're worried about points accumulation, depending on where we are in the table. And then considering the amount of chances that they created last game, I think that they should just not get discouraged. Everyone goes through ups and downs in terms of goal droughts, but if they continue playing the way they will, they're going to score plenty of goals. So I think just don't get discouraged if they hit the bar a few more times.
Yeah, I would kind of add to the Dequa conversation. I think it's more than just feeding him. I think if you're not going to feed him, it's how do you unlock the space for the likes of Connor McGlynn and take advantage of goal scoring opportunities from other players on the team. So that spacing between, in the heat map we saw, we couldn't see a clear delineation between where Chico was on the field and where Brito and Holst, like there was so much overlap. We couldn't see a defined space that was like, this is Chico's area. Don't come in here unless you're giving him the ball.
Yeah, their average position, they just kind of seem like they were all on top of each other.
So I'd like to see that. If that is the case and Chico's being man-marked, I'd like to see us take advantage in whatever open lanes that creates and take advantage there. So again, either feed him and get those goals from him or take advantage of the pressure that he takes off of other players. And then I think it's a little bit more of the same. Like you kind of said about sticking to the game plan. Locking down the central play for Monterey Bay is going to be critical here. The way their formation works, the way that they are looking to generate a lot of the attack centrally through the likes of Rafael Baca and Tristan Traeger, it's more of the same. It's the same way they contain Micheletto for New Mexico United. They need to do the same thing here, and that should be able to kill off a lot of the transition and counterattack that MBFC wants to do, and that will open up a more of that tackle, like high block line, and allow to kind of control the tempo of the game. So do more of that. But then also the difference here between this game and the home opener, they have to be brave and they have to come out guns blazing. This is still a new team, and teams haven't quite figured us out. They may have thought that they got the roadmap from the first game, but this team has plenty of surprise still in them. So they need to go for the early goal. They need to not go in and play defensively or play for the point. We talked to Coach earlier today, and he said that's not his style. That some coaches, that's tactically what they do, right? Like if you can take points away from your opponents on the road, that's still a win. And if that's the outcome, then I'm not going to be mad about that. But Coach needs to go for it. The players need to go for it. They need to continue that never say die mentality early on. And then so much so, though, that if the goals don't happen in like the first 45 to 50, 60 minutes, we need to make those impact subs sooner than the 75th minute. Now, I know that was probably because of fitness levels, and that's a tactical decision from a health perspective. But if our players are healthy, we saw the transformation on the pitch when the likes of McGlynn, Doyle, and Sadie came on. We need to be willing to take that risk sooner and see if we can unlock something by destabilizing Monterey Bay's plan instead of they didn't throw in the kitchen sink, so to speak, but like, let's be honest, Doyle comes on in like the 85th, 83rd minute, scores 6 minutes later. Like, what could have happened if he came on at the 70th minute, right? Like, we don't know. That's not the point. I just want to make sure that we don't try to fight for the draw, or if we're down one, we wait too long to claw. I want to see us get ahead in this game and then just never relent, right? Like never stop and show the league what we can do when it comes to an away match. So that's kind of where I'm thinking on it. According to FootMob fans, and I don't know if this is just heavily skewed towards like an apathy towards Monterey Bay, or like their fans don't participate, but there's a 70% win expectation for Rhode Island FC going into this game. And I don't know. That's all generated by the fans. There's no pundits. There's no analytics that are feeding into this. I don't know that I normally see away statistics line up like this. Like usually at best you'll see like 50%. Like, it could go either way. 70% of people participating are saying Rhode Island FC is going to get the win here.
Defiance rise up. They probably just piled on and voted we're going to win.
So speaking of wins, we need to explain. We've been doing a score prediction. You heard it on last week's episode, but we didn't explain the scoring methodology. So really quick, if Jason or I get the outcome correct, which is a win, loss, or a draw, that'll be 1 point. And then if we get the actual accuracy of that score line right, that'll be an additional 3 points. So last week, Jason predicted a 3-2 win for Rhode Island FC. I predicted a 2-2 draw. So I'm taking 1 point. I'm ahead of you in the standings. I don't know what the prize is going to be yet. We'll have to work that out or let listeners offer suggestions before the end of the year. But I just like that I'm starting on a win and you've got 0 in the tank.
I'm not worried.
So what are your predictions for this game? I'll go first since I'm the winner. Whoever won needs to start, so they have to set the tempo. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say 3-1. I feel that we understand the blueprint of what New Mexico United showed us. It's going to be more of the same with Monterey Bay with some slight variations. I think we crack the code this time. And I think we're going to get a 3-1 performance out of Rhode Island FC. We win 3-1.
I think it'll be 2-1. I think we'll see a little bit more of the same where we're attacking, dominating, and maybe hitting crossbars and whatnot. But we'll end up with 2 and pull the win out.
All right, let's get to this mailbag. Taras asks, after watching last Saturday's match, are you changing your expectations of what RFC can do this year?
Nope. I still believe that they are, at bare minimum, a playoff team, probably closer to one of those top 4 home positions, but we'll see how it goes. I don't think there's anything conclusive that we can really draw from the first match to say that, they're not going to be really good. Andrew H. wants to know, what is the minimum threshold for 2024 to be a successful season in your eyes?
So I mean, it's kind of what you just said. It's a playoff spot, no matter what. Obviously, I would like it to be at a home opportunity, but you said minimum, so it's playoff for me. It's beating Hartford at home, at least at home in Beirne Stadium, and it is playing exciting soccer in front of the fans in the home matches. It is. I've seen teams that get booed off the pitch because the fans are frustrated, not with the results necessarily, although sometimes the results are what impact that. But when you see a team just kind of phone it in or give up, and for me, that's something I never want to see. So I don't expect that from this club. But when you say like my minimum thresholds, it is the club shows up. Like, I'll give you an example. I can't remember the last time I saw a team go up and clap and thank the fans as a collective unit. I haven't seen that in years, Jason. It's like they're professionals. They walk off. It doesn't matter if it was a win or a loss. I haven't seen that. And unless I'm watching like lower league English football, and sometimes in the EPL it happens too, but that is a part of the football culture in American soccer that I have not seen in a long time, of like, it doesn't matter if you won or you lost or you drew. You get out there and you thank the people that spent the money to come and celebrate and watch you perform. I really love that. And I hope that is something that, I'm sure it started because coach expected it and demanded it, but I'm hoping that is something that naturally gravitates into culture in this team, and it's an expectation so that coach doesn't even have to like point a finger. It's like, this is what we do because it's the right thing. All right. So Mike writes in, what is your preferred tactics on the road? Is it a more defensive tactic where you try and hold the home team at bay and counterpunch, or a more aggressive and try to score early? So we kind of talked about this, but what's your 30-second version of that?
I would always try and go for the win, to attack. I think when it comes to defensive minded, it's more of a, case by case scenario. If it was really David versus Goliath kind of thing, then you know what, I could see why you would want to do that. But at this point, I think that they should just go for it. Evan wants to know, considering we got called for 4 yellow cards, do you think we will have a less physical game plan? Which player/players do you think step up/step back from last week?
No, we're going to do the same thing. Coach was really impressed. He was really proud of the guys and their physicality. I would like to see them be smarter in their fouls. I think that when you looked at the score sheet of how many fouls we collected before we received cards, I don't think that I don't think they drew out or stretched the amount of fouls they could have before earning those. I think some of them were more reckless and quicker to accrue, and I think Seth the ref would agree. In terms of players to step up, step back, I think Chico it's not a step up as much as it just needs to be finding his place and then understanding how the likes of Doyle and Sadie can get meaningful minutes here. But like this team, they did amazing. And I know that we've been critical, and that's part of our job is to try to unpack some of the things we see from our analytical perspective. But like at the end of the day, if you were to give me a thumbs up, thumbs down on the performance of the team last week, it's all thumbs up. If they did the exact same thing, and at worst we ended up with another draw, I would be completely happy with that, because that's one, and another point, and two, it's another hard fought game. So like I don't think there's much that needs to happen right now. I think the goals just need to come from a little bit cleaner shot taking and just closing those opportunities and converting them as the XG kind of indicated from the match.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's any sort of stepping back. I think that coach would maybe just ask them to be smarter, like you said, about the fouls. Yeah. They're still going to play the same way.
Yep. And then final question on the night. Tom from Twitter, is the starting lineup settled, or do you think it's still a fluid situation?
I think at this point there probably is a little bit of fluidity to it. And part of that probably comes from the team having some injuries. For instance, Fuson, like when we signed him, I didn't think that maybe he was going to be a locked-on starter. But so far from what I've seen from him, I think that he's going to, constantly be making coach question whether or not he needs to have him on the field.
Yeah, I think until all of our players are healthy, it's a fluid situation. And then once all of our players are, and they have the minutes behind them, that's when you'll start to see the coach gel that lineup a little bit more. So good questions. Let's get these events out of the way and let's get out of here.
All right, so our first away match of the season will be against Monterey Bay FC on Sunday, March 24th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and will be available on NESN and ESPN Plus, as well as SiriusXM FC Channel 157. We highly encourage coming out to join the Defiant 1636 watch party at the Guild for that one.
Or you can join RIFC's official club watch party at the Providence Brewing Company in, you guessed it, Providence, Rhode Island, where Chip will make an appearance, as well as a $50 merch card gift raffle and some other exciting stuff that will be there. That's the club's official one. We're going to be at the Guild with Defiance, but either spot is a great place. Feel free to, if you're curious about more information about the Defiance one, reach out to the supporters group. And if you want to go have a good time with the club, the more RFC fans, the merrier.
And then up next, after the Monterey Bay FC game, Rhode Island FC will be away to Tampa Bay as they take on the Rowdies at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday, March 30th. You'll be able to watch that game on ESPN Plus, and again, Defiance will be at the Guild for that one as well. And you guys can check us out on socials. We have Twitter, Threads, and TikTok at RAFC Podcast. We have an Instagram at Raising Anchor, and we have a website, www.raisinganchorpodcast.com. We did it, buddy. First game and first podcast recap.
Who knew we would still go this long? I knew.
No, I always knew.
We'll have to figure this out still. Anchor's up.
Anchor's up.